Hey now, welcome back to the DrupalEasy podcast. This is season 14, episode 2. Today I'll be talking with Alison McCauley from Cornell University about how to be a mentor. Alison has been a mentor at Drupal events around the country and is one of DrupalEasy's paid mentors for our clients. We do provide professional mentoring services for organizations to help junior developers advance. Before we get to the interview, let me tell you about DrupalEasy's long-form training courses. If you listened to episode 1 of this season, you heard all about professional module development, our newest long-form training course. That's 90 hours of curriculum over 15 weeks. You can learn more about that at DrupalEasy.com/PMD. But I also want to mention our beginner-focused class, which is now unbelievably in its 12th year, and that is Drupal Career Online. That runs 12 weeks. We meet twice a week, and there's office hours thrown in there as well. That class begins on February 13th, and if you're interested in that but you want to learn a little bit more, then by all means join one of our upcoming free 1-hour Taste of Drupal webinars. So you can sign up for that and learn all about Drupal Career Online at DrupalEasy.com/DCO for Drupal Career Online. Hello, Alison, and welcome to the DrupalEasy podcast. How are you today?
Thank you. Hello, Mike. I am doing fine. How are you?
I'm pretty good. So let me start off. So what do you do day to day for Drupal? Because as cool as it would be to be like a full-time mentor for Drupal and Drupal people, I don't think anyone has that job yet. So what's your kind of day to day gig?
It would be cool. I am a Drupal developer at Cornell University. I work for Central IT, and Cornell Central IT, and we do. It's a custom development team. We build websites and web applications for various units around the university. But I work in Drupal all the time. So that's what I do at Cornell.
So would you classify yourself as, front end, back end, site builder, project manager, or just a little bit of everything? What bucket would you put yourself in?
I consider myself site building and back end.
Okay.
I do a lot of Twig, which gets into front end, but I'm definitely not, client side programmer with JavaScript and CSS and things like that. But I do like working in Twig. So that's probably the big overlap. And I'm also not, high level custom module developer either. So it's I'd say site builder / back end.
I think there's some front end in there as well. I think you can probably add that as well.
Yeah. I think if I had to pick from a list, I often pick full stack, I guess. I think that's what people call those things, but it's blurry, It's
All right.
It's blurry. Yeah.
So knowing that you participate at Drupal events as a mentor, so how did that come about? Like, what was your first foray into mentoring other Drupal folk?
My first foray into mentoring was with the Drupal Association's Discover Drupal program, and I found out about that on Drupal Slack. So that was
about a year ago.
Yeah,
right?
It was last fall. Yeah, so that's when I found out about it on Drupal Slack, and from there, that was the first time I'd done any mentoring, and then from there, I was offered the job to be a mentor through DrupalEasy, to do that as a paid position, which was just the coolest thing I'd ever heard. The idea of being paid to do that, and I loved the fact that a company was investing in their junior developers like this, not just to send them to training, but then also to invest in them through providing mentors for them. And that seemed so special and cool and important. And then also it takes I love that it also acknowledged that senior developers there's only so much of their time they're going to be able to put into mentoring junior developers and still also do development work. So it just seems like just a wonderful program all around. Love the idea of being a part of it. So, and to be paid. It just really, really cool. And then after that, for the first time I'd done mentoring at a conference. I got to do that at DrupalCon in Portland this past year. I'd gone to mentored contribution several years ago at Drupal GovCon as a mentee. I made my first contribution to Drupal through that. But this year was the first time I'd been a mentor at DrupalCon. It was really awesome. I loved it.
So I know that as we were prepping for this, and I shared a Google Doc with you with some potential questions, you gave me some feedback, something along the lines that you weren't crazy about lists.
Yeah, like a top 3 this.
Yeah, which, I said that's fantastic, but we're still doing it because,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's cool and, I think you can handle it anyway. So, so I'm going to limit them, but so let's not say I won't say top 3, but like what are some of the primary skills that a mentor should have?
Thinking.
I see the little beach ball spinner going.
Yeah.
Indicating
Exactly.
Allison is thinking.
No, on my computer, it's just it's an hourglass. No, I don't even know if it is anymore. I think everything just stops.
Let me ask it a different way, and maybe this will trigger something. When you are talking to people at like a Drupal event, or let's limit to a Drupal event. Is there anything that you might notice in someone that said, "Wow, that person would make a really good mentor"?
So certainly listening and being the kind of listener who listens to the entirety of what someone says, and lets it all sink in and process what they said, and think about the entirety of what they said, and even doing some stuff I learned in an empathetic listening class, saying some stuff back to them, that kind of a thing, that kind of really active listening, making sure that you're on the same page with them, or finding out if you're not on the same page with them of what they're trying to describe. That's really important.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Well, I know I agree with that because I'm a big believer that a lot of mentoring isn't necessarily conveying technical information.
Yeah.
But rather, providing confidence to the user.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. So if they're, one form of mentoring might be, as you said, listening, taking it all in, and then just acknowledging that, yeah, what you're thinking is correct. That's a great way of doing it. Off you go. And so there's very little technical information exchanged, but that like bit of confidence, just someone knowing, oh, okay, I'm not doing something crazy here. I'm going about this the right way. That's a pretty big deal, I think.
Yeah. I think it's also important to listen to everything that they're saying, so that you really are understanding what they're going for. Because sometimes when someone starts explaining something to you, you think it's going to be about one thing and it ends up being about another. So especially when you're feeling energetic and excited, it's really natural to just to already your wheels are spinning, and maybe you even totally unintentionally interrupt somebody or anything. But even if you don't, your wheels might start spinning even if they're still talking. And it's really important to hear everything they say, and make sure that you're fully understanding what they're going for and what they're working on, or enough to be able to have a conversation with them about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And to convey back to that person that a subset of that information to let them know that, yes, I have been listening. I do hear what you're saying. And so that the person that you're mentoring actually has a level of comfort that, oh, okay, Allison is she gets what I'm trying to say.
Yep, absolutely.
The conversation can go from there. So one thing that I see, and I've been guilty of it in the past for sure, is when I'm in a mentoring situation, whether it's like a one-on-one thing, with a client, or with a developer, or with a student, or it's at a community event, is providing too much information or too much hand holding. And rather than mentoring, it kind of crosses over into teaching, and even further than that, like doing it for the person. So how do you judge where that line is? Where's the sweet spot for a mentor?
Oh, it's so hard. And I definitely go into that sometimes, definitely slip into teaching sometimes. You know, some of that just comes with practice for me anyway,
Mm-hmm.
figuring, trying to think about how a session went after the fact and thinking about, yeah, just sort of reviewing it in my head. So something that we do as DrupalEasy mentors is we keep notes together. All of the different mentors contribute to these shared notes documents that are really helpful. But when I'm doing those notes, it certainly helps me, revisit the way that the session went and what we covered and how we went from one thing to another and the way that how much I was talking, how much they were talking,
Mm.
and did I all of that together. So that process is helpful to me to think about how I handled each thing and whether just think it through to reflect on it. It helps me reflect on the session. So that's practice definitely and practice definitely helps with that. I would say simply having it in your head to think about teaching versus mentoring, having that in your mind in itself is useful so that when you are reflecting on a session that you are taking that into consideration. I would say that the toughest times to not slip into teaching are when it's a topic that the mentee is just less skilled with, less knowledgeable about. So that's when it can get tricky. And
Right.
honestly, sometimes sessions end up being a little teachy and just try to be mindful about it to not let it get completely teaching and like a full on lesson. But sometimes some teaching happens. uh, but it's, I guess, ideally you end up sharing with people, you help them find the tools to learn what they need to learn to get to get a task done, to learn to do a thing, and even better, how to find those tools themselves. So I know I do, and I see other mentors do, helping these mentees with Googling, like literally, what would I search for in this case? Or what would you search for in this case? And let's see what those results look like. And let's see, here are some other terms that are helpful to include in your Google search if you're looking for whatever it is.
Yeah, that's a big one, I think, is how to
Yeah.
find stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? How to find stuff. All right, so let's take a step back. Let's say, let's kind of put ourselves in the shoes of a new mentor with a new mentee. Um, they're going to start meeting. Like, how do you? Number one, like, what's a good way to start? Like when you're introduced to someone that, let's say, you're going to mentor. Like, what's a good way to start? And then also, how? And this probably is going to be different depending on the context, but who should kind of be at the steering wheel of that? Who should be kind of dictating maybe not dictating, but driving either the pace or the topics or just the conversation? In your opinion, is that more of a something the mentor should be doing, or should the mentor be more reactive than proactive? And I asked like 14 questions in there, so just pick
That's
any
good.
one and start there. Yeah,
I'll just pick the ones I want to answer.
there you go.
No, part of it is you're just starting a new relationship with someone as two people. So at the beginning, you're just getting to know them and they're getting to know you. Something I really liked that a mentee did was to ask me what my strengths were, what I really like doing in, the Drupal universe, that kind of thing, so that they had an idea of the kinds of topics to bring to our sessions, which gets to another one of your questions there.
Mhm.
I think it's really great when a mentee brings topics or, a specific task or roadblock or a project or whatever to the session. I think that can work really well. In a different context, it can also be connected to, lessons or something that the mentee is going through. That's the way it was with Discover Drupal. They'd be at a certain part of the training program. As mentors, we were there to supplement that or to just to
Right.
complement that. At DrupalCon, it was, we had some issues, some issues on Drupal.org that we were going to either people were going to bring issues that they were interested in working on, or we'd have some ready to go to work with people on. That was a contribution. We were contribution mentors. So it's definitely helpful to have some specific stuff to work on. And then in the context, I think you can decide what makes more sense as far as who brings that specific stuff to the session.
Right. I don't think there's a hard and fast rule for this. I know personally, I like it when the person I'm mentoring has a challenge that they're facing, a problem to solve, so to speak. Right. And that doesn't mean that, we sit down, they tell me the challenge and we immediately like dive into it, but it provides kind of the mission for the meeting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to get this person. It doesn't necessarily mean, and this part's important, I think. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to solve the problem during the meeting. A lot of times for me when mentoring, I just want to get the person unstuck or get them moving in the right direction. So that's, I think that's I've had success with that. Let me put it that way. But on the other hand, I also think that if you're regularly meeting with someone as a mentor and you start with the meeting and the mentee, starts things off, say, well, I don't really have a whole lot going on this week. I think there's plenty of opportunities for the mentor to just start asking general questions and kind of like, you know, step back from a tree and start looking at the forest a little bit and ask some of the questions like you just mentioned about, what the mentee was asking you about, like, what aspects of Drupal, are your strengths or weaknesses, or is there something you have a passion about that you'd like to learn more about, and things like that. So I actually like the idea of of some type of mission that has to be, that has a goal.
Yeah, I think I like the idea of the goal. I like the idea of shooting to help them be unstuck if they bring a problem to the session. I think that's a great way to think about it.
Right. And I actually think it's a healthy way to go about it. Like I don't want to think about I have to fix this for them. Like that's the trap right there.
Totally.
Right. The mentor's job is not to solve all of the problems. The mentor's job, I think, and I could replace the word mentor with teacher, when I'm doing trainings, is, it's 50% technical and 50% building confidence.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And it's really hard to have confidence when you're new at something.
And the crazy thing is you might technically know what you're doing, but you don't know if it's the right way to do it.
Yep. Yep.
So let's talk about real quick. So long-term mentoring, maybe like weekly, bi-weekly meetings, something like that, versus like a Drupal event where it's one day, once or twice a year. Like how do you approach, how do you approach each of those? Like kind of the really short term versus the really long term. Are there advantages to one or the other? I'm sure there's disadvantages to one or the other. Kind of what's your big picture on that stuff?
So being a contribution mentor at a Drupal event, that's the kind of mentoring I've done. That's the short term. That's definitely the cool thing, is getting someone over the hurdle of never having contributed to having contributed. And that is amazing for everyone. I mean, it feels great. It generally feels great for them. You can see it and feel it in the moment. It's really cool. And it's a pretty daunting thing to dive into. So being there to work with people one-on-one or in small groups, it's so fun and it feels great. That's so another awesome thing about it is that if there's a chance that you'll end up working with numerous people, over the course of 1 to 2 days. And that's really cool. That it's not always like that. Maybe you end up working with one person for the entire afternoon, and that's also awesome, but that's still pretty short term. But so maybe you end up,
right.
I got really lucky Portland this year, someone who came in to learn how to contribute on the first day came back and was a mentor the next day. And that was just the coolest possible
Oh
thing
yeah,
to happen, you know? So that was really awesome. That's, yeah, can't really get any better than that.
And then how about long term?
Yeah, for long term, you know, really building a relationship with someone or, you know, or several people is really valuable, as, you know, for me and hopefully for them. Getting to work on things for, you know, over the course of time, getting to revisit topics and, you know, strengthen skills. It was really neat it was neat the times that I've gotten to be part of conversations about people picking, you know, what kind of a path they want to take professionally. That's really, really neat. And yeah, getting to be part of that conversation with them while they're working through their thoughts about it and talking about different aspects of these things.
I think the long term type of mentoring really makes me a much better short term mentor.
Huh.
Like not so much the other way around for some reason,
Hmm.
at least in my
That's
head.
interesting.
Yeah, but I think just the patience that you need, um, as well as the like get the goal should be to get someone unstuck, not to do it for them.
Huh.
And
I can see that.
that's yeah. So I think that for me, it makes short term like the DrupalCon events a lot more fulfilling for me. I think.
That's interesting.
So if you could, oh, go ahead.
No, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah. For, yeah. Huh. No, I'm just thinking. Go ahead.
If you want to agree with me, you can agree with me all you want. That's what this podcast is really all
Yeah.
about.
No, I
It's
don't
just
disagree with that. When I'm thinking about it, it's also just more practice to be a mentor. So like all, you know, doing it long term
yeah.
means you're doing it a whole lot over the course of time and learning more about yourself and mentoring and working with different people and all of that. So that that's also, so that's what comes to mind for me, which isn't really what you're saying, but that is what comes to mind for me.
So what happens when you're mentoring someone in any context and they ask you something that you're not super comfortable with from a technical
Yeah.
standpoint?
So it's something that I was nervous about, especially when you're having the mentee bring topics to a session,
Sure.
you
Yeah.
know, like,
Happens all the
yeah,
time.
absolutely. Uh, and, you know, it depends, of course, but so I found, and I wouldn't have thought this beforehand, but I've found that especially with practice, you realize that you really can help someone find or learn how to find some of these answers or get unstuck, like you said, even without being an expert. So I have found there are certain aspects of object oriented programming that feel to me like when I was so good at math in middle school and high school, right up until calculus. Even in pre calculus, I was just awesome at it. And then something happened. I hit this wall. It was so disappointing, but I just
Oh.
couldn't get over it. I don't know. It just, I guess, hit a wall. And I've heard this happens with people in certain kinds of areas of learning. Anyway, there are certain aspects of object oriented programming that I've just struggled to get my head around. And I keep hoping, I haven't given up. I gave up on calculus. I haven't given up on this, but it's some really cool things have happened while I've been working with mentees on this, that helping them learn how to learn about this, even though I don't actually understand it. You know, I've
yeah.
learned about it. So I had a session working with someone on routing and controllers that I don't know how to use for, you know, in my own code, but she did, you know, especially after our session, but like, you know, she already knew it a little bit more than I did, but still was stuck. I mean, she was stuck. So working with her, getting her unstuck like that, it really, it, and I felt just a little bit, and this is about me, but I felt this little bit of I don't know how to describe it, just a little, something moved just a little bit in my head for
Yeah.
understanding this that made me feel like that, like I might get there at some point, and I've moved on from stressing about getting there, but I would like to be able to move forward with that for my own professional, whatever. Anyway, and I wouldn't have ever seen that coming. I wouldn't have anticipated that happening and being able to do that. And talk about confidence. The fact that that came up in the last few months and not the first few months that I was working on this, thank goodness for all of our sakes. But I mean, nothing,
Yeah.
not that the stakes were that high, but that, it certainly, the fact that I'd already been mentoring for a while and felt more confident as a mentor, like that I had whatever that confidence is to not just say, I'm not going to be able to help you with that today. Just, can we do a different topic? Which also, by the way, sometimes that happens too. We try a little bit. If we continue to both hit a wall and we're just not getting there, that happens, and that's okay. It's,
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I mean, we're, with what we do with DrupalEasy, we're in the nice position where we have a team.
Yeah.
And we've got most of the bases covered. So if one of us doesn't know something, chances are there's going to be another mentor that can kind of, come in and save the day.
Yeah.
In that case.
Absolutely.
I do think there's a big misconception, and I've seen this at Drupal events as well, that people don't feel qualified to mentor because they feel like they don't know everything.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think that's a big trap.
Mm-hmm.
Because first of all, no one, I would argue, knows everything about Drupal, because that would be almost impossible. I think when mentoring, one of the lessons I learned pretty early on that I was afraid of at first, but now I almost embrace it, is saying, I don't know.
Mm.
I don't know the answer to that. But I'm confident enough that in the next 45 minutes, we can make some headway.
Yep.
We can figure out how to figure out what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely.
And honestly, part of that might be, let's see if we can understand the basics. Let's see if we can understand what actually, is being asked for. And, I think one of the things of being a good mentor is, saying, you should ask that person over there, because I know that they know their way around technology. Why?
Yep. And they have that kind of infrastructure that, the people who set up mentored contribution at DrupalCon are just incredible. They've done it a few times, but also it's just, they've had that set up so, to try to triage people when they come in. And then even if you do that and then it turns out it wasn't the right fit, whichever table they get sent to or whatever, you just adjust,
Right.
Hey, can someone work on blah, blah. And I mean, we at DrupalEasy, we have a Slack channel, we post to each other when we have questions. It's not always in the moment, but still we share what we're talking about or questions that we have, and help each other through it.
Absolutely. If you had a time machine, specifically a DeLorean that can get up to 88 miles an hour, and you can go back in time, and it'd be about a year when you first got your first taste of mentoring, and give yourself some advice. And there's a lot of advice that we've just talked about in the past 30 minutes or so, but I want you to let's focus on one. Like, if you could just give past Allison one little nugget of advice about how to be an effective mentor, what would that be?
I'm between two, so I'm going to say two, and then you can decide what you want to use. So one piece of advice I'd want to give past Allison is to be thinking about teaching versus mentoring a little bit sooner or something, or to have that in my head from the start, so that when I'm thinking about sessions, and just to have it in my head, not to add any stress or pressure to past Allison, just to have that in my head, to keep it in mind and reflect on it. Another piece of advice that I would give to past me is that the more that you do it, the more comfortable you will be. And then after that, the more confident you will be. And even though it was scary and felt like it was over my head or something at the beginning, I really was nervous. I definitely had that worry. I was really worried that I didn't have enough expertise in enough different things. I felt all of that stuff, all of those things that are normal things to worry about. Just kind of do it anyway.
Yeah.
And people are really nice. The people who you're working with are really glad that you're there. And you'll be glad that you're there. And you just keep trying and keep practicing. I can't think of, yeah, it's just over time you get more comfortable. And then after that, you get more confident, and it's worth it.
Yeah. I think, I'm just thinking back about our conversation here. And one word that we haven't used a whole lot that I'm just realizing is kind of silly is like communication. I think it's way more important to have, good communication skills than good technical skills when mentoring.
Yeah. Yep. I would agree with that. Yeah. And compassion and empathy, like, is it like really, you're like, of course.
Just be a freaking
yeah,
human.
exactly.
Am I right?
Just, be a good listener, or, listen, be a empathetic, active listener, and thoughtful and compassionate and empathetic to yourself and the people you're working with,
Are you ready for the final question?
Let me think. Let me see if there's anything else. No, yep, I am ready.
All right, Allison, so here comes your final question. And I kind of know the answer to this, but I'm just wondering, I want a little, well, I think you're going to know the answer as well when you hear the question. Imagine a Venn diagram between people involved in Drupal and another group of people that I'm going to tell you about in a second. And I'm just curious how much intersection in these two groups of people is there? And the other group of people is choir singers. Are you aware of the intersection between those two groups of people, or how large that is?
Mike, I'm not aware of that. I don't know the answer to that.
Is it only you?
It can't be only me. Oh, well, no. Okay, well, no, that's a mentee.
Okay.
Well, but maybe a future mentor.
So.
I don't know.
Well, no, not just mentors, anybody in the community.
Anybody in the community. I beg your pardon. It's not.
I am constantly surprised.
It can't just, no, there's no way it's just me.
Yeah. But you're not aware specifically of anyone else, is what I'm getting at.
I guess not. Huh.
This is like one of my favorite activities at DrupalCons and Drupal events is to find out, Drupal friends that I have, or acquaintances, get to know them better and find out, like, what do they do when they're not doing Drupal? Because holy cow, there's so many like fantastic things that people do that, that I've known for years, and then suddenly I find out that, you're a glass blower. What?
Yeah.
When did that happen?
Oh my God, absolutely.
When did you? Yeah.
There's there was always somebody. It always made me think of some sort of troubadour, but I can't remember their name, and that's a bummer because I know that I would know it if I heard it. But who was always singing and playing the guitar during lunch at Drupal GovCon. I almost don't want to say that because if I can't say their name, that just sucks. But anyway.
Well, if you think about it, I'll add it in the show notes.
Cool. I know. I will definitely find out their name. That was always such a wonderful addition to lunchtime. Oh my goodness, it was so. Yeah. It was just lovely. So
I like it because I like learning stuff like that, because then I feel like, okay, well, now I have something to talk to that person about that isn't Drupal.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I don't know any other choir singers in the Drupal community.
All right. Well, that is your task.
I will. Yeah. I'll have to ask on Slack.
Are you going to be in Pittsburgh for
I am not. I am not. We're rotating at my office. So I got to go last year. Other people will get to go next year. So that's fair.
A bummer.
Yeah.
That's a bummer.
Yeah. I have been to Pittsburgh once before. I enjoyed it a lot. So another time. Are you?
Yes, I am. That's a cool fact. And I guess, by the time this podcast, I'm going to take a little bit of a risk here. By the time this podcast comes out, I think it'll be announced that we're providing a training at DrupalCon.
That's wonderful.
Our intro to module development training.
That's wonderful.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So I'll have to find some other contribution mentoring opportunities for myself, since, I mean, that was only my first time, and I don't want a whole nother year to go by. I don't want it to be a 2-year gap to when I do it again. So I have to go find and make some opportunities for myself, which I can do on Drupal Slack. Highly recommend anyone interested in mentoring to check out the mentoring channel on Drupal Slack. It's not just for people who have done it before.
Fantastic. I will add that link to the show notes. Well, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you,
Alison.
Mike. This was really fun.